Welcome to Risk Matters, the insurance podcast brought to you by DWF and your global guide to the latest trends and issues in the insurance and reinsurance industry. Join us as we explore topical issues, emerging technologies, and the innovative strategies that are shaping the global future of insurance.
I think that brings us neatly on to then the investment value chain and where insurers fit within that. Because it seems that often, now obviously being a lawyer working on renewables insurance claims means that we see things at the end of the claim circumstance. But there is it seems that there is this entire investment chain that occurs even before the underwriting has taken place. I'm curious to know where insurers fit within that chain and should they essentially appear at a much earlier stage.
We are infamously the forgotten stepchild in the value chain, as I like to say. But the way, it'll be easy, I think, if I can explain for our listeners, and frankly, you know this as well, what is this value chain that we're talking about, right? So whenever there is a need for a new project or there is a demand for a new renewables investment coming in from somewhere, you have financiers, lenders, private equity rushing and contacting the government, the state to say, okay, fine, there's an opportunity here. There's contractors that come in. There are energy companies that get together, and they all speak to each other without insurers being present. And so what happens is you have the lenders in one room, you have the lenders advisors, you have the lenders insurance advisors, you have the regulators, and the state, all in one room, deciding where they want to put their money and where can the state help to provide incentives for this development to take place, because this is directly linked to jobs, this is directly linked to buying raw materials from the country or contacting local contractors. So in net, there is a country-state level benefit. By the time the front-end engineering design, which we also called FEED, is completed, and all sorts of project consultancy work is undertaken, the lenders have a good idea of how much they should be lending. Majority of these projects are lent on a syndication basis. Exactly the same way we work in Lloyd's or in the subscription market, where we share the risks between different insurance companies. Banks do the same. But they know how much they want to lend. They know exactly what breaks they're going to get from the state. But they have one condition, that everything should be backed by insurance. And
you're not in the room at that stage.
And we're not in the room at that stage. So by the time that they have decided all of this, this then comes to what we call a project financial close. Once a project is financially closed or is closing, we are then asked or invited to participate in the tender stages of a new build construction. I'm talking about construction here because that's where things get focused. We are then involved and invited to say, okay, this is what the project's going to look like. This is the design. This is who is funding it. This is the management structure, et cetera, and you just need to insure it. More often than not, and I'm speaking on behalf of the market over here, we don't have much room to maneuver because the lenders have already listed their list of conditions. And so the insurance then has to comply with the lender's requirements.
And we often see that in lenders' clauses.
Absolutely.
Appended to policies.
Absolutely. You would see that on your side in the legal world, that's where things start getting very stressed. And so this is why we don't have a fixed product. Our products are very bespoke, depending on what project we are looking at, which country we're looking at, and we try to make them more flexible depending on the situation. So in this value chain, we are the last component. And if you were to picture building a Lego castle, we would be the last block that completes the Lego castle.
The flag.
Exactly. It would be the flag. So you could take that as a sign of pride. But at the same time, I think the conversation can be much more productive if we're involved in earlier stages, because we would be able to not only provide better insurance solutions, maybe even cost benefits to the lenders or to the insured interest parties, but we would be able to design the product catering to their needs rather than playing catch up.
Yeah.
Because right now we are playing catch up to every single major infrastructure project that hits our desk after all parties have spoken.
I think that's really curious from a legal, pure wording, black letter, what the wording says.
Yeah.
And often I think it seems to me that you would improve the product if you understood what the bargain needed to be.
100%.
That's a classic law school lesson is what is the bargain your parties are trying to achieve.
100%.
That seems to be quite a fundamental point. And I certainly, before being more involved in renewables claims, I hadn't appreciated the late stage at which insurers were involved in that process.
This is very, very true. My wife works in leveraged finance for a big investment bank. And more often than not, her job is her team lends to private equities who are looking to acquire different businesses. And every time they are looking to issue, the lending requirements, insurance is right at the end of the section, which they don't really pay much attention to, because they say that's the part of the lender's insurance consultants to sort out. And so I totally agree with you. If we were part of that discussion, if we were in the room, then the product can be way more tailored to the specific needs. And in fact, we might even come up with some innovative solutions for unidentified risks.
And what would that look like, hypothetically? Yeah. Would that, obviously, had your underwriter, Myles, you're a claims professional. How does that, would it be you? Are there others in insurance companies that can be, would be more appropriate to be involved in those early discussions?
We at Allianz have ARC, Allianz Risk Consulting, our colleagues who do a very good job of talking to insureds about the engineering behind their projects to understand both the construction and operational stages. And that helps, I think, Ahad, to shape the cover that we offer and informs that conversation with the broker and the client. I know other organisations have engineers involved doing the same thing as well. The question is, I suppose, getting back to Ahad's earlier point, at what stage does that engagement happen?
Yes.
So we are doing something to try and close that loop. And as claims, I'm promoting a dialogue between ARC and the claims team because things do go wrong. So we need to close that knowledge loop, really, between what they see at the front end and what we see at our end, so we can all be better informed. So there's certainly a lot there, but I think there's a question about how engaged, or when, rather, we are engaged. I think I understand that clients don't want us in at the very beginning, but perhaps there's something to be said, Ahad, for that happening sooner.
100%. And Myles, like I've the two colleagues of ours I'd like to talk about, because I've been in the room with them during very early stages of a project lifecycle. Gordon Lee, who heads up our ARC, Allianz Risk Consulting, Natural Resources Division, and Dr. Wei, who was part of that division but is a wind expert. And I've seen them in the room talking about things that could go wrong in the renewables world with clients who have not even thought about these particular risks. And they have acknowledged that those sessions help them make different investment decisions in the future. And now these were sheer chance that we had those sessions, and I've seen the value that they created, but it doesn't need to be left on chance. We can build this as part of the value chain. We can build this as part of, like Myles said, we don't probably need to be involved in they're doing the front-end engineering design, but somewhere in the middle, if we are involved before financial close, then we can identify, for example, is there a need for alternative risk products? Is there a need for sustainability? We have a very, very well-known market-leading sustainability team, two members who have contributed a lot to some of our solutions. One is Funke, and then is Elena Biasi. They both specialize in coming up with innovative solutions for sustainable clients. So why can't we have people like that in the room when we are in the middle or just before financial close, so as to identify, right, maybe we need to come up with a product that is a little bit more akin to the bespoke need of the client.
I know there's certainly a lot of engagement from risk engineers in London Market Association groups and the like. And it seems to me that the level of experience and knowledge and expertise is outstanding, and how that could not assist in terms of developing a new product or being very close to clients seeking to develop these sort of projects could not be anything but positive, I think.
Absolutely.
That brings us on to, we've seen some industry press recently, specifically in relation to renewables, about perceived challenges that the annual renewal process provides to cutting edge renewables or other projects. Just quite curious, both of you being very familiar with and have always worked with annual renewals, it seems to me there are benefits to that process, and I'm curious to get your views on that as to whether that is something that does hold back the development of cutting edge technology in renewables and in other energy sectors.
I'll take it from an underwriting perspective. Yeah. What we do, you'll have to split it, and I'll try and split it for the audience between clients. So when we're talking about major clients, the big European energy clients like Engie, for example, Iberdrola, for example, most of these clients have global programs that span across countries, hundreds and billions of dollars of assets in there, all publicly listed companies, so the information is available online. It is very cumbersome to renew those programs on a yearly basis.
Yeah.
That is a totally known fact. And what the insurance market does, and we're part of that as well, we provide what is called a long-term agreement.
Yeah.
That is, in shortened form, an LTA. So an LTA, what it does is it provides multi-year cover so long as certain conditions are met. And that provides clients with certainty that they have multi-year coverage. That coverage can go up to 24 months, sometimes 36 months. We're now seeing some clients looking at 5-year LTAs as well. Because, again, if you've got a product, if you've got assets that are homogeneous to a certain degree, then do we really need to look at it on a yearly basis? No. So provided things are constant to a certain degree, and those parameters are defined in each of those contracts individually, there is a very, very good benefit in having these long-term agreements in place. So that's where I totally agree with you. When it comes to projects that are technologically complex, when we're talking about, let's move away from the renewables world and go into conventional power.
Yep.
When we're talking about highly complex gas turbines, all right, that are generating 600 megawatts of power through one machine, and these machines have millions of components in them, there is a very good benefit in reviewing those contracts year on year because the nature of the machine is changing, right? We're dealing with something that is way beyond, some of them are as big as aeroplanes, if you really want to look at them. So there is benefit in looking at those risks on an annual basis and the technological complexities that it provides. I don't think that looking at it on an annual basis would be cumbersome to technological innovation, because the only thing that we are doing is ensuring the fact that these risks get the proper coverage so that at the end of the day, all of us want to be in a situation when a loss happens, the client is served 100% because that's what we're selling.
Yeah. Do you think that? But do you think that applies to cutting edge technology like to modular nuclear? So SMRs, small modular reactors, and the like. So do you think that sort of approach, where at least in the early stages, that annual renewal process should not in itself be something that holds up the development of those projects, those products?
No, absolutely. You're right. I mean, it should not. It's a fascinating topic, right? The nuclear world. Yeah. Now, the first SMR, there are two currently that are being built globally. One is in Canada. Then there's one over here in the UK. Actually, there are two in the UK. And there's one in the US as well. We all know that the UK one, which is being done by Rolls-Royce, as they're leading this technology, they confirmed that that's not going to be in operation until 2032. Whereas the one in Canada that's being done by Ontario Power Generation, they claim that between 2028 and 2029, that will become operational. So we will have to see when those actually come to the market, how the policies respond.
Yeah.
My best guess is that when they do become operational, those risks will be managed by the nuclear pools because of the fission nature. Things get very, very colorful when we talk about fusion, because there is a massive, massive discussion going on in the market right now with the extreme power needs of data centers, energy security. Fusion is becoming more and more a hot topic. And if you allow me 2 minutes to just explain what is the difference between fusion and fission. Fission, the nuclear process, which is also the same thing that happens in atomic bombs, is when you have two atoms, deuterium and tritium, coming together and producing energy. This is layman speak, very, very common knowledge. So apologies if I'm butchering the science here.
Completely. Miles will pick you up.
Miles can pick me up on this.
It would take too long.
And that's fission that's been proven that works currently in nuclear power, right? Yep. So all the power plants that you see globally, the nuclear ones, they operate on fission. Fusion, which is the process that takes place in the sun, that's when you have the same atoms, deuterium and tritium, moving away from each other. And the energy that they generate is exactly the same process that takes place in the sun. Why is fusion interesting? Because the amount of fuel that you would need to generate electricity from fusion is mind-boggling. And if I can illustrate that with an example. So most of our listeners, if you've got kids in the UK, you would be familiar with Calpol as the medication, right? Okay. Yes. So let's use Calpol as an example.
Other paracetamol-based products.
The paracetamol-based products as well, yeah. So we'll use Calpol as an example. Now, everybody knows about the purple stick, right? Mm-hmm. That purple stick, when you have a toddler, you probably give around 2.5 ml, okay? In fusion, you need 1 ml, okay, of deuterium to produce enough power to power 50 households in the UK. That's how much fuel you need, right? Just put that into perspective. It is a rabbit hole that goes so deep that even Morpheus would struggle to explain. But that is fascinating because we're talking about energy that can be produced at exponential levels and power that can be produced at exponential levels without requiring much fuel or resources and in a clean manner. Yeah. So again, insurance is a far off thought, but it is something that is now being asked in the market, and what do we need to do? But it is difficult to say that annual projects or annual policies will hamper this innovation because these products are not there in the market yet. The experience that we have from the current products in the market shows that we don't always have to issue annual policies. There are benefits to doing that, like we discussed. Yeah. But we do have long-term solutions.
But where do you even, for something completely brand new for that? Yeah. And I think also AMRs, SMRs as well, given that is, they are based on existing nuclear technologies. Where do you even begin to investigate whether we can, as Allianz or whichever company you work for, how do you begin to investigate this is a product this is something we can get behind? Are you talking to Miles about similar claim scenarios you might see in other industries? How do you, I'm just quite curious to know, how do you go from zero to here's an insurance policy that we can provide to you to cover you for the risks that your finance parties, your governmental regulatory requirements need? How do you start that?
We have no clue. No, jokes aside, I think you're absolutely right. What we do, we can use SMR, AMR, and fusion as an example, because these are the hot topics right now. What have we done? We have engaged with a number of stakeholders. Mal sitting here in the room, claims teams. We've engaged with the regulators. Yep. We've engaged not only with financial regulators, but also energy regulators to try and understand what is this technology and what are the inherent hazards and risks that it possesses. Because again, going back to the Top Gun quote, we want to be taking these risks on our balance sheet. And we need to be able to pay for them. So we engage with all the stakeholders at a very, very advanced level across different teams. Then we also engage with risk engineering. Our biggest sort of asset that we like to claim in Allianz is our risk engineering knowledge and expertise. We have 55 risk engineers globally in Allianz Risk Consulting, each of them focusing on various products out there and various components of an energy life cycle. For example, we've got 2 gentlemen in the ARC world who are focused just on cabling.
Yeah.
So they go into minute detail on each of the components within the energy world.
There's a stakeholder you've missed there, which is lawyers.
Yes, I have missed the lawyers.
Yes. And the reason, I want to bring Myles in on this, because the reason I raise that is because where we're talking about crossover and learning from other from things we may have done in the past, or certainly utilising knowledge that may already exist in the market. It was curious to see that with nuclear liability regimes in particular, it remains to be seen in the UK if we will follow a similar approach to liability regimes that there is in more traditional nuclear for SMRs. There's a government consultation that is recently closed on that. But what's curious is the calculation for the limits of liability cap for any operator is based on SDRs. And I thought I remember using SDRs before. And of course, that is something that colleagues in the maritime space are very, very familiar using in terms of third-party liability, working out the ultimate liability for a ship if there's a pollution event and so on. So I thought it was striking that there is, even in those scenarios, being comfortable with using terms like that, there already exists in the marketplace, in a place you would not normally think to link, existing knowledge. I don't know if Myles, you found any other crossovers coming from a marine background into now focusing more on the energy side.
Well, Benny is the answer. I think ultimately, as I said earlier, the energy industry, or insurance market rather, was focused on offshore, and that came out of the marine industry.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to use a quote of my own, and I think it was Muddy Waters, that the blues had a baby and they called it rock and roll. Well, the same thing. There we are. So yes, the energy market, certainly the offshore energy market, grew out of marine insurance. That thinking in the marine world shaped the very policies that were used for offshore energy. They were seen as marine policies until essentially the MAR 91 form was done away with and the market reform, etc. So there became the concept of an energy policy. I don't know if that stands up legally, but that's certainly what people hold in their heads in the market. So then we now move on to renewables. We have wordings that are being shaped for renewables, but they are wordings that inherit the offshore energy concepts. So they will have many of those focuses or features. One of the areas that I've been very active in at the moment is floating offshore wind. I am writing or have written a wording for floating offshore wind, which is being considered by the market, which deals with that very point. So we have a wind turbine, but it is floating. What happens if it slips its moorings, or the moorings break rather than to use a more precise term, or a vessel collides with it when that's happened? We are very much into the maritime arena there. And knowing how we deal with that from the marine world has allowed me to basically come up with the clauses that are required for that particular wording. There are plenty of other examples. Things like CTL, which is an age-old maritime concept, marine law concept, and marine insurance concept, that exists in onshore policies as well. So understanding exactly how that applies and the ins and outs and the problems around insured value and things like that feed into that issue pop up even now in something that's nowhere near the sea. So I think it turns out there's really only a number of ways that one can go about insuring things anyway. And you often reach those solutions that already existed before if they aren't inherently organically included anyway. So I think knowledge of other insurance classes is very helpful when looking at new classes in particular, because why reinvent the wheel is the essential concept, I think.
Okay, thank you. I'm keen also to get your views on any particularly interesting jurisdictional developments or any jurisdictions that are ones to watch for the future, in particular with renewables. Ahad, could I start with you on that one?
Sure. I think the ones that it's a very, very wide net, right? If you were to focus on every country in the world, and I think there's so many interesting opportunities.
There's any that the audience might not necessarily be
the ones that I'm very keen on, and I think the audience will find interesting is we'll start with Turkey.
Yeah.
So Turkey has popped up on the renewables scene very, very aggressively. Up until, say, 10 years ago, Turkey was very famous for being one of the biggest coal producing power countries in the world. Today, Turkey is the 5th biggest producer of renewable energy in Europe, 11th globally across all renewable energy spectrums. In fact, they are the biggest manufacturer of solar PV panels that are sold in Europe, particularly in Eastern Europe. So much so that they are, from my knowledge, the only country's solar panels that the insurance market is willing to provide performance guarantee insurance on.
interesting. Okay.
It is fascinating. It is an area that I've been to Istanbul myself last year to meet with our colleagues there and the rest of the market, and I was blown away by how far ahead they've come and the plans they've got for renewable energy. So they've embraced it wholly. You wouldn't associate that.
No, that's not sort of out there.
No.
As a known fact.
It definitely doesn't. The second one, which is another outlier, is Pakistan. A lot of listeners would know Pakistan is a country in South Asia with 250 million people, and is a growing country, right? With a very big young population. The fun fact is that Pakistan is the 5th largest user and purchaser of solar PV panels in the world, and particularly the ones that are coming out from China. China's biggest customers of solar PV panels, number 3 is Pakistan. So they have powered their economies completely based on renewables and are now heading in the retail solar world. Because Pakistan has always suffered from electrical instability due to shortage of power being produced, and renewables is solving that issue. So that's another one that users should be very, very optimistic about. And the third one is one that I recently visited, was the Nordic countries. And in the Nordic countries, the most interesting area that I've found out was battery energy storage. From 2020 to 2025, the amount of battery energy storage installations that have been installed onto the grid in the Nordic countries has grown by 7 times, x7. That's the kind of growth you've not seen anywhere, particularly on BESS. And the primary reason for that is because they're producing way more electricity than they need. They're not that populated. What do you do with all of that? You store it for the times when you will have volatility in the grid systems. So these are 3 parts of the world, because we always talk about the immense opportunity that's coming out of the US, the immense opportunity that's coming out of China or other parts of the world. But I just wanted to just shed some light on these 3 countries.
Very helpful. Interesting you mentioned the US there, and I wonder, Myles, offshore wind in the US, obviously it's facing some difficulties at the moment. Is there anything, in your view, any promising developments on the horizon?
It is a challenging environment, and I would say that offshore wind is being constructed despite that challenging environment. We have some very large projects that are underway. The political landscape is what it is. Governments have different views on different things. So we are where we are for the moment. I think certainly looking ahead, or just purely from what could be an interesting development, California is very keen on offshore wind, floating offshore wind, because the coastline falls away quite dramatically. So they have some leases available. I think they are, at the moment, for want of a better phrase, let's just say suspended or on ice or whatever. But they are certainly identified and available. That would be an interesting development, because I think the scale that is possible and the energy requirements of California are exactly what floating offshore wind needs to really get going.
Yeah.
We know it works. We've been way beyond pilot schemes and the rest of it. We have another one in Japan that's started up. The resource is greater offshore where we require floating wind. And I think it just requires a little push to get past the tipping point. And I'm quite excited or interested in California because I think the scale of it and the demand there would be just that push. So that's one to watch, I think. And there are further developments or areas available in North America, around New England and into Canada, around the East Coast, Newfoundland, that sort of thing. And I think also there's other exciting parts of the world for renewables. South Africa is the big question. Now, the grid in South Africa, unfortunately, is perhaps struggling. They're struggling with conventional power. The problem being that also the age-old problem for renewables is that they are in the renewable sources or the sources of energy are in remote areas. You need a long transmission network to get them to the end user. Conventional power networks are engineered in the exact opposite way because the end user is a long way from a centralized power station in coal or gas in the old world. So I think South Africa has a tremendous potential for wind, solar. Unfortunately, there isn't the grid there, and the expense of developing that is a major challenge. But that's an interesting one. Australia is coming on strong. Not so much offshore wind there, mainly solar at the moment. It is the ideal location, has a lot of solar resource and not many people wanting that space.
Yeah.
So, but then that gets us back into the remote locations issue we spoke of earlier. Yeah. So I think in a sort of anecdotal way, I say to people that just about everywhere in the world has some form of renewable resource. So there are very few places that are completely bereft, I think.
And with that in mind, we haven't laboured the point about the political situation in certain jurisdictions. But if you were to speak personally, would you, and you would have one decision that you could make, Myles, if I could start with you, please. One decision if you were Prime Minister for the day. We'll keep it to energy policy if you don't mind.
Yes, of course.
But what practically do you think, based on your years of experience, what do you think would be beneficial to a beneficial change to make?
We have a very good platform for renewable energy. Offshore wind, plenty of transferable skills. I think I would push in that direction. There has been a recent report from the CBI.
Yep.
They commissioned. And that talks about the offshore wind industry. If you include supply chains and related businesses, it would create 1.1 million jobs, 1.5 billion in gross value added as a measure of GDP. Now, that's 4% of our UK economic output. I think those figures, all reports say different things, but let's taking that one as an example.
Yeah.
And let's say the CBI are a fairly neutral organisation, so it is they who are presenting this. I think those figures that's quite powerful for me.
Thank you. Ahad?
Well, thank you, Franco, for allowing me to plug in my election campaign. That's one. But no, it's a very, very good point. And Myles, thank you for sharing that because this is coming up a lot now. And I guess the major issue we've got is that people don't understand the way energy works. So I'd go slightly different on this on my side because Myles has done a very good job in covering that aspect. For me, energy is very, very much linked, or energy policy is very much linked to the future and the current of any country or the future economic aspects of any country. I would like to design a policy an energy policy that would benefit the youth group, which is the 16 to 28-year-old group, that can further contribute in a meaningful way to the country by lowering the energy cost burden that they are currently facing in today's world. We have seen this going on from Russia-Ukraine back in 2022, all the way up until now. It's particularly the youth, people who can afford to ride this crisis out, are continuing to do so, but there's a big question mark on how long. However, the youth can't afford to do so. And we're facing an inflection point right now where things are looking very, very gloomy for this age group. And if you want a viable future, a viable economic future for your country, you need to be able to support this age group, which is going to take you into the next AI generation or whichever way we're headed. I would focus on an energy policy that caters to this, brings down that cost that the youth is facing. That is the primary, I see that as the primary concern.
Well, thank you very much, Ahad and Myles, for your insights today. And thank you to our listeners for your attention. So looking ahead to the next 2 years, clearly innovation and new remedies. But it seems let's not forget to utilise the experience and know-how that we've already built up in the industry. And also let's not underestimate the beauty of referencing a hard copy book. And with that, thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Ahad.
Thank you, Franco and Myles. I'd just like to close off with the quote from the father of modern management and Peter Drucker, who says that the only way to predict the future is to create it.
Thank you, Myles. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think I shall end by saying hear, hear.
Thank you for listening to Risk Matters, the DWF Insurance Podcast. We hope you join us again soon for future podcasts in our series.